When we talk about Barcelona, we talk about titles, goals, beautiful play, Guardiola, Xavi, Iniesta, Suarez, tiki-taka, the Camp Nou, the fans, Messi, 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 Messi. However, before this successful dynasty, there was a tough period for the Catalan club, a period full of challenges.
Jo no estic enfrontat amb el senyor Cruyff.
How you for Johan Cruyff?
Yo me fui. Felicidades.
La treu Pacheta, hi ha falta favorable a l'Espanyol i final del partit. Final a Sarrià, el derbi acabat amb empat, Xavi Torres.
After 2 years without a title and what's left of the dream team, Johann Cruyff was sacked before the last match of the season after the Dutchman's tense relationship with club president Josep Núñez, which has become irreparable after months and months of rumors about the possibility of Bobby Robson taking over the team. The way in which Cruyff was sacked after all he's done for the club was cruel, as Núñez didn't have the guts to do it himself, as he sent his vice president Gaspar to send the message to the Dutchman at the training facility, which ended up being an ugly affair. And so, after 8 years of service, the longest tenured manager in Barcelona history left from the back door. In came the ex-England manager to a difficult situation in Barcelona, as Bobby was in the middle of a political and football war, and he'll take over after a legend.
I follow a legend.
The board saw Bobby as a bridge between Cruyff and Van Gaal, who'll take over in the following season. But the Englishman was not aware of that, and expectations were not high for the season, and he was destined for failure. The club brought in Ronaldo from PSV Eindhoven in a record-breaking transfer, as he took his first big step towards being a superstar at just 19 years of age. Bobby insisted on bringing his assistant and right-hand man Jose Mourinho to Barcelona, but the team managed to enter a rough patch in March, but managed to turn around the season after a historic remontada in the second leg of the Copa del Rey quarter-finals against Atletico Madrid, where the Rojiblancos scored 3 goals in the first half at the Camp Nou to make the aggregate score 5-2, as the fans showed their disapproval in a traditional manner. And the word was that the board had decided on the Englishman's fate at that moment, as Van Gaal was looking on from the stands, if not for a historical second half.
L'assistència per Stoichkov a la mitja volta, el rebot per Ronaldo que remata i gol, 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 gol. Sergi remata tal com ve, rematada i gol, 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 gol. Marcat Pantic, ja ha marcat Pantic. Interior, refús defensiu, recupera Figo, remata amb el peu dret, gol, 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 gol. Assistència per Ronaldo, entra a l'àrea, pica amb el peu dret, gol, 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 gol. Abelardo, ha salvat el porter, rematada i gol, 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 gol. Pizzi, che, qué bueno que viniste, qué bueno que llegaste, Pizzi.
Ja està, cau una vengada al camp i gol, 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 gol. I final. Figo. Encara Figo buscant una posició de xut, l'ha trobat. Gol, per Popesco i final. Esclaten els jugadors del Barça.
The titles were not enough to keep Bobby's job, as he missed out on the league title after collecting 90 points. And if Ronaldo had not gone to a friendly tournament with Brazil and missed the last 3 league matches, it could have gone the other way. And as soon as Ronaldo left for Brazil, the fans were not aware that he'll never wear the Barca shirt again after he lost confidence with management after negotiations on his contract renewal fell through, as he went to Inter after Moratti made an attractive offer. And after signing with Van Gaal, Robson accepted an upper management role in the club, but left at the end of the season.
Het niveau van de spelersgroep is van die aard dat ik bijvoorbeeld een succes als bij Ajax hopelijk kan continueren.
After getting Ajax back to the European summit, after the Dutch club went through a tough period after Cruyff, in came Van Gaal to Barcelona with the same objective, and that is getting the Blaugrana back to the top as his Dutch compatriot has done before him. The board saw Van Gaal as the perfect replacement because on paper he used the same Dutch style of play which was applied by Rinus Michels and improved by Johann Cruyff. To complete his coaching staff, Bobby Robson recommended Jose Mourinho to the Dutchman. In his new managerial role, Bobby Robson filled Ronaldo's gap with another Brazilian named Rivaldo, who had an amazing year with Deportivo La Coruña. Despite bringing in many Dutch players, Van Gaal faced numerous locker room issues in his first season, with some veteran players who were named the Cruyff Mini 5, and they were 5 players that were fully attached to Cruyff's philosophies. Stoichkov talked about his first interaction with Van Gaal in the locker rooms after the Dutchman said the following phrase to the players.
Dice así, aquí mucho Cruyff.
The reason for these issues could be the result of Van Gaal's complicated relationship with Cruyff, which demands going back to 1972 when Van Gaal was a talented and upcoming player for Ajax, but was not given the chance in the first team as there was a player named Johann Cruyff who played in the same position. And when he became the new Ajax manager in 1991, the decision was not popular across the media. And the Dutch Telegraph newspaper made a failed campaign to replace him with Cruyff, and Van Gaal mentions other conflicts in his autobiography as well. And Van Gaal's successes throughout the years were always held to Johan Cruyff's standards. Despite the team not implementing Van Gaal's vision to the fullest in his first season, and despite crashing out of the group stages of the Champions League, Barcelona achieved what they couldn't with Cruyff as they won the domestic double, the first for the Blaugrana since 1959. The highlights of the season first came when Barcelona won at the Bernabeu, and the second one came after Barca won in the Camp Nou against Madrid by 3-0. Which came after a failed vote of no confidence from an opposition party called the Blue Elephant, which was led by an ambitious young man named Joan Laporta, who was crucially a big fan of Johann Cruyff. So in the eyes of Van Gaal and club president Nunez, this win in the field and in the ballot boxes ushered in a new era, an era that is devoid of their common enemy, Johann Cruyff.
Barca! 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 Barca!
With the start of the new season, it was evident to the fans and the media alike that Van Gaal's tactics were not similar to Cruyff's in any way. Where Cruyff gives more freedom for players to express themselves on the field, Van Gaal had strict instructions to keep and maintain the tactical shape. And the fans felt that the team was beginning to shape into a non-Catalonian or even Spanish side after the manager brought in 5 additional Dutch players and got rid of most of Cruyff's players as well. And despite not being proficient in the Spanish language, Van Gaal often entered into a war of words with the Catalan media.
Muy malo, muy malo. Interpretación siempre negativa, Muy bien, muy buen, Winkels.
And he was not a popular figure at all. He then became under big pressure in the beginning of the season after the team crashed out of the group stages of the Champions League in a group that contained the eventual finalists Manchester United and Bayern München. But one of Van Gaal's better decisions in the season was him handing an 18-year-old named Xavi his professional debut in the place of Guardiola, who was injured for big stretches in the season. The reason that gives Van Gaal the confidence in starting a boy at that age goes back to the methods and teachings that Cruyff has inserted to develop the youth system at Barcelona. Methods that give confidence to young players like Xavi to participate quickly with the first team. Methods that favor football minds over athletic abilities. Methods and teachings that are agreed upon with Cruyff and Van Gaal. And Xavi's goal against Valladolid in December ignited the team as they entered a positive streak of matches to eventually capture the lead and end the season 11 points ahead of runners-up Madrid. Within that positive streak of matches, there was another dominant performance in the Clásico, which was won by 3-0, a win that was full of positives, but Van Gaal saw one single negative, a negative which signaled the beginning of a famous rift between the Dutch manager and his Brazilian star, Rivaldo. The issue was simple, but the solution was far from it. Rivaldo played on the left wing, and it wasn't his favorite position at all, and he had clear instructions not to cut inside to the middle throughout the match. The Dutch manager had the team's interest in mind, as Rivaldo didn't have a great defensive work rate, so him being on the wings and losing possession there has far less implications defensively than if he lost possession in the middle of the pitch. In his first 2 seasons under Van Gaal, the Brazilian didn't have an issue with his position, but entering his 3rd season and after being crowned the best player in the world in December of '99, everything changed, as Rivaldo demanded to change his position and clearly said this in front of his manager and teammates. Van Gaal refused that demand, and after a match against Atletico in December, the Dutchman substituted his Brazilian star in the 72nd minute, and Rivaldo told him that he'll never play in the wings again. So the Dutch manager sent him to join him in resigning, and the Dutchman left after one last press conference.
Amigas y amigos de la prensa, yo me voy. Felicidades. ¿Es posible tú puedes callar?
With the Spanish club's presidential elections coming up, Barcelona had a new problem on their hands. Luis Figo was one of football's elite players in the year 2000 and vice-captain for the Blaugrana, and he had a great relationship with the fans and Catalonia as a whole.
Blancos, llorones, de los campeones.
But in came one of the most powerful and richest figures in Spain, Florentino Perez, with a plan to destroy that strong bond. Real Madrid president Lorenzo Sanz was a big favorite to continue his presidential reign after finally winning the long-lost European Cup not once but twice in 1998 and the year 2000. So if Perez wanted to win the elections, he needed a miracle. So he asked Madrid's fans in a survey who was the player they wanted the most, and they answered Luis Figo. So he promised thousands of Madrid's members that if he won the elections, he'll bring the Portuguese to the Bernabeu. His promise was strange and near impossible, but he had a complete and meticulous plan. Each player in the Spanish league had a release clause in his contract with varying figures, and Figo, who was still on his old contract and was in the middle of renewal negotiations, his release clause amounted to 60 million euros, which was a transfer record if it was paid. Perez made a deal with Figo's agent which guaranteed the player 2.5 million euros if he signed an agreement that legally binded the Portuguese to Madrid if Perez somehow won the elections. Figo gets to keep the 2.5 million if he lost, and it was not clear if Figo authorized his agent to deal with Perez or not. But when his agent confirmed the deal, the effect was huge, as all media outlets filled their pages with that bombshell of a story. To calm things down, Figo had done an interview on the 9th of July and denied everything, as he said he was not that crazy to go to Madrid. But after a week, the plan actually worked and Perez won the elections. Barcelona Vice President Gaspar won the elections as well, and Figo went to him to stop the deal, but the whole transaction was complicated. If Barcelona wanted to keep Figo despite his release clause being paid, they would have to pay the penalty, which amounted to 30 million euros, which is like paying the 5th highest transfer fee in history at that time just to sign your own player. And Perez mentioned to the club members that if he failed to bring the Portuguese player, they will get to watch Madrid for a whole season without paying a single dime. And he'll finance that with the 30 million penalty clause that Barcelona will have to pay. So Gaspar saw the headlines like this: Barcelona president will pay for Real Madrid members to watch their team for a whole season. And he said that he'll die if he managed to agree on that. So on the 24th of July, Figo was presented in the Bernabeu, barely smiling for the occasion. And now Barcelona's hatred for Madrid was embodied in one player, like Laudrup in the past. And in the first match back in the Camp Nou, the football took a backseat. It was not a game anymore, as the hatred went to new levels. The effects of this transfer were extended to the next few seasons, as Gaspar was paranoid after Figo's transfer, and that resulted in many bad decisions. He paid a lot of money to bring failed transfers and increased pay wages and release clauses to secure his players, and sacked the new manager Ferrer midway through the season and was replaced by Carlos Rijkaard, but with no use, as Barcelona barely qualified to the Champions League, all thanks to Rivaldo's historical hat-trick in the last match against Valencia.
Rivaldo con el pecho, la chilena de Rivaldo, ¡gol! ¡Madre mía, qué golazo! Lo que ha hecho Rivaldo. Barça 3, Valencia 2.
Which came a week before club captain Guardiola's last match for the Catalan club, as he left for Italy after falling out with management. Not much was different in the next season, 4th position again with no titles, and on the other hand Figo and Madrid were in the middle of the Galacticos era. And after winning against Barcelona in a tense European semi-final, they won their 3rd Champions League title in the last 5 seasons. And Luis Figo's annual return to the Camp Nou was like a final for Barcelona. And the solution, Gaspar brought back Van Gaal, which made Rivaldo leave immediately, accompanied by other players who had enough of the Dutch manager. So the club brought in an upcoming star in Riquelme, who didn't adapt with the manager nor the players. And after wasting more money in the last couple of years, the team focused on La Masia, and Van Gaal handed debuts to players like Andres Iniesta and Valdés. But in December of 2002, the team lost against Sevilla by 3-0 in the Camp Nou, and the fans and media alike ordered Gaspar to resign.
Absolutamente increíble.
And Barcelona has now hit rock bottom. The Dutchman resigned after Barcelona were just 2 points adrift from the relegation spots and in the 15th position. And Van Gaal famously said, "The team didn't hit rock bottom yet, we could still be last." Caretaker manager Radomir Antic managed to guide the team to a European spot at the 6th position. He had many great decisions, such as moving Puyol from his position as a fullback to the center, and also gave Xavi much more freedom in the middle. But Riquelme's issues were still evident with the new coach, after the Argentine refused to shake the Serbian manager's hands after he was substituted in a league match. But after crashing out against Juve in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, Catalonia was distracted by the upcoming club presidential elections. After Joan Gaspar's resignation in February, the club's members asked for elections to be held immediately. And one of the candidates was a young Catalonian group who were led by Joan Laporta and his second man, Sandro Rosell. One of the reasons this campaign succeeded was the members' wish of seeing some new blood in the president's seat, and also they had Cruyff's blessings as well. But a fake transfer sealed their win. Before the end of the elections and in the 10th of June 2003, Laporta amazingly announced in a press conference of his agreement with David Beckham, and he had the documents to prove that.
Jugador David Beckham al Futbol Club Barcelona.
This agreement with the superstar sent a message to the members that this group had what it takes to accomplish great things. But Perez had an official agreement with the Englishman to make him the newest Galactico for this season. But Rosell had a great relationship with Madrid's president, and because of that, Perez didn't raise a word to the media about this fake transfer. So after winning the elections and Beckham transferring to Madrid, Laporta took his first big decision as Barcelona president, and that was choosing Frank Rijkaard as manager. The decision was strange at that time because of Rijkaard's limited coaching experience, which includes going down to the second division with Sparta Rotterdam for the first time in the club's history. But Cruyff vouched for his Dutch compatriot and said that any Barcelona manager must be conscious of what this club represents and how he conveys that to the media and fans. And Cruyff believes that Rijkaard has these characteristics. And Laporta managed to sign Ronaldinho, who was the focus of United, to replace Beckham. But Rosell was an ex-executive at Nike and had a great relationship with the Brazilian star and managed to sign with him instantly. And Ronaldinho instantly announced himself magic, and also after the Blaugrana was very active in the transfer market, the team was struggling in December after a 5-1 loss against Malaga and losing 3-0 against Racing, as Rosell asked Laporta to sack Rijkaard and bring in Scolari, but Cruyff insisted on giving the Dutchman some time. And after the club brought in Davids on loan, Barcelona managed to patch up an unbeatable streak and also won at the Bernabeu for the first time since 1997 after Xavi's winner, and finished the season behind Valencia as runners-up. Despite the position, the fans were optimistic for the upcoming seasons, and the optimism increased after a historic transfer market as the Blaugrana brought in a player who shared the same animosity as the fans do to a certain club. The Cameroonian Samuel Eto'o was one of the players who were not given the chance with the first team at Madrid because of the Galacticos. So when he left for Mallorca, he used to relish the annual 2 matches against Madrid. And in May of 2004, Eto'o scored a brace in the Bernabeu and pointed and said, "I was here." And despite Madrid owning half of Eto'o's contract at Mallorca, the Cameroonian refused to move to any team other than Barcelona, and he sealed the move to the Blaugrana in a deal worth 26 million euros. He instantly became a fan favorite as he formed a great duo with Ronaldinho. And after a great start to the season, Eto'o and Barcelona faced their first tough test of the long season when they hosted the Galacticos in November at the Camp Nou. And the Cameroonian didn't wait long to score.
Roberto Carlos protege ese balón, ojo al despiste, Eto'o va a marcar, Eto'o! ¡Gol!
The Blaugrana won by 3-0 in a match considered to be the beginning of the end for the Galacticos era. And with other transfers like Deco and Ludovic Juli, Barcelona were among the best in the league. And Frank Rijkaard gave some limited minutes to a young 17-year-old Argentinian in that season. And despite going out early in the Copa del Rey and against Mourinho and Chelsea in the Champions League, and also a big loss at the Bernabeu in the league, Barcelona won their first league title since 1999.
Rotterdam, però sí que ho ha pogut fer amb el Futbol Club Barcelona.
As soon as Barcelona takes a step forward, they manage to take 2 steps backwards as well. Immediately after the celebrations, Sandro Rosell sent a letter to all Barca members announcing his resignation as club vice president. Within that letter, he lists the reasons why he left, like the group failing to follow the campaign's message and lack of transparency and democracy in the style of management. He also mentioned that he doesn't have an issue with Laporta, rather it was Laporta's management. And in the press conference, Rosell was asked about the degree of Cruyff's influence in club decisions, and he responded by sending a message to the Dutchman and said, "For the good of all, Johan, step back and let Laporta work without pressure." Joan was quoted saying that his relationship with Rosell took a hit after Eto'o's signing, as it made his friend Florentino Perez a bit mad. And the performances on the field was not great despite keeping the same players and adding the Dutchman Van Bommel, as the Blaugrana was struggling in the beginning of the season after accumulating 10 points from the first 7 matches. But when Messi's minutes were increased, the team clicked and wins started to pile up, and a new trio of stars were formed in Barcelona. And before the annual test at the Bernabeu, Ronaldinho won the Ballon d'Or and entered the field to show why he's the best player in the world.
3 para 2, puede buscar distintas opciones, Ronaldinho que se va solo, Ronaldinho, ¡gol! Ronaldinho se va por velocidad, Ronaldinho se va a meter, Ronaldinho, ¡gol!
Salgado mentioned that the applause from Madrid's fans for Ronaldinho was not just a sign of respect, but a way of punishing Madrid's players. And Barcelona entered an unbeaten streak of matches up to February and distanced themselves in the La Liga race by 12 points. And then came a recurring test in the round of 16 of the Champions League against Mourinho and Chelsea, the team that defeated the Blaugrana last season. And despite the poor conditions at the Stamford Bridge, Barcelona won the first leg, which Mourinho saw as a controversial match after Del Horno was sent off because of a couple of dangerous tackles on Messi. As Mourinho said after the match that Catalonia has great theatre, and today Messi showed that. A draw at the Camp Nou sealed the qualification for the quarterfinals, but came at a cost as Messi had a muscle injury which will keep him out for the rest of the season. A win against Benfica in the second round pitted Barcelona against title favourites Milan in the semi-finals, and after a cautious game in the first leg at the San Siro, Juli's goal was crucial. The caution continued in the second leg at the Camp Nou, which saw a controversial decision, but the Blaugrana managed to hold on and qualify to their first European final since the Dream Team had done it in 1994. And after sealing their second consecutive La Liga against Celta de Vigo, the Blaugrana focused on their opponent in the final, the Gunners Arsenal, who were at the end of the golden era.
It's Thierry Henry! He scored! He scored for Arsenal in the Bernabeu!
Xavi was injured and will miss the match, and despite Messi returning to training before the final, Rijkaard sent him to the stands, which was a decision that made the young Argentinian very upset. As the match started, Arsenal instantly applied a lot of pressure on the Blaugrana. But in the 18th minute, Arsenal's keeper Jan Sleeman was sent off after a tackle on Eto'o. But Henry and his teammates continued to create chances, and Sol Campbell managed to score before the end of the half. Rijkaard's substitutions in the second half changed the match, after Iniesta entered instantly in the restart, and also Henrik Larsson in the 61st minute, and finally Belletti in the 71st minute, as Arsenal decided to defend until the end of the match. Henrik Larsson was playing his last match for the club, and at 34 years of age, it was his last chance within the European elite. And he managed to gently divert the ball to Eto'o for the equalizer. And another assist for Belletti for the match sealer. And finally Barcelona achieved a similar feat to the Dream Team. In the middle of the celebrations, Messi didn't join his teammates. He was still upset of the decision of not including him in the final. And if history repeats itself, then where is the Dream Team? Lack of professionalism from the club's star Ronaldinho, and lack of confidence in club president Joan Laporta. Barcelona had fallen quickly in the following seasons after they were at the top. And in 2006, a year before he took over the Barcelona youth team, Guardiola was writing articles for the Spanish newspaper El País. And in the World Cup, Guardiola was impressed by a young Argentinian, as he wrote that this player has the special ability that all the greats possess. And the article was like a glimpse into the future of the next generation, the future of Barcelona with Guardiola and Messi.